America, we stand for freedom. Though freedom is never really free, we yearn and strive for government, protecting our liberty.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Right to Know, brought to you by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Andrew Couture. I'll be your co-host this evening, and co-hosting with me is Mary Lotze, and we have a very special guest this evening, Alex Veras. Alex is a Republican conservative activist, well known in the state. And tonight's question will be entitled Weighing In. Is President Donald Trump against immigrants and immigration? And we'll be talking about that this evening. I'd like to welcome you, Alex. How are you
Thank you.
this evening?
It's not too often I get to here in Central Mass. It's always a pleasure to be here in the Fitchburg area.
Now, where exactly are you from?
I'm a Haverhill kid.
Okay.
You know, my family came there back in the 60s. So, you know, grew up in a town that had somewhat of an industrial base. Now there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the spirit, the hard work, you know, is still there. And my parents are immigrants from the Dominican Republic.
Now, you've been on our show before.
Mm-hmm.
You were on in October when we did our large panel discussion about supporting Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Now, as a son of a first-generation immigrant to this country, we were somewhat surprised to see your pride and vocal support for Donald Trump. We have been led to believe that many with strong and near immigrant backgrounds, especially those with a Hispanic or Latino ethnicity, were not supportive of Donald Trump, specifically because his platform to build the wall and get tough on illegal immigration. In fact, per the BBC.com, only 29% of Hispanic voters reportedly voted for Donald Trump. Can you weigh into that?
Well, Donald Trump did better amongst Hispanics than either Mitt Romney or John McCain. I think, you know, the media likes to portray, much like they portray the black community as one monolithic vote. We're not that. You know, we're different hues, shades, different mentalities, different thoughts. I mean, I will admit that when Donald Trump, on his announcement back in 2015, you know, they're all saying they're all criminals, they don't send their best, that kind of hurt. I think there's still an opportunity for the GOP to grow in the Hispanic community. It's going to take a while. It takes a lot of hard work. Nothing comes over overnight. It happens overnight. But it's how you say things. You're going to find that a lot of Hispanics do believe that you do have to have strong immigration laws. But I'm more vocal in my community because there's a group thought, oh, you don't speak out against your own. But privately, you're going to hear, yeah, I don't want the people that are the criminals back in the old country here. This is why I left. So you will hear that in private conversation. You're not going to hear that vocally like I'm saying right now. I mean, you know, there are differences. There are things you have to consider. Are there opportunities? It's how you reach out. But with a party, particularly in this state, that's not reaching out, you're gonna have to wonder, is Charlie Baker going to be the last Republican elected statewide? Simply because where Kirsten Hughes is a party chairman, not that I want to play insider politics with the people that are watching this, when she became party chair in 2013, you probably had about 20 plus elected Hispanics in the state, from mayor to state rep, school committee member. Probably about 200,000, 250,000 registered Hispanics. Here we stand 4 years later, there are over 50, close to 60 elected Hispanics, and the number of registered Hispanic voters will soon outnumber registered Republicans. Last year, 2 years ago in city council elections in 2015, about 30 plus Hispanics got elected to various offices, school committee, city council. Not one was a Republican. Because the Democratic Party, and I've seen this with the current mayor of Lawrence, Mayor Rivera, I consider a friend, they don't grow candidates. We don't have and I'm Dominican, I'll say this because I've had cousins that played ball, you don't have a farm team. You know, we're not even in T-ball when it comes to growing a team, and that's part of the problem. But you look at Dan Rivera, who from when he first was interested, was matured, was taught how to fundraise, how to speak. Now he's mayor. Could end up possibly being a congressman because Fitchburg, Haverhill, Lawrence are in the same district. End up being our future congressman at one point, depending on the success he has in Lawrence. I mean, I'll give you another example. Was in 2012, you have the national committee member who should be gone as far as I'm concerned, Ron Kaufman, is, oh, Massachusetts is going to be a battleground state. The party at that meeting in Newton spent about 45 minutes talking about whether or not members of the state committee, that's the board of directors of the Massachusetts Republican Party, should have email addresses. Meanwhile, across the state, they had Ahmad Rivera, who was a Springfield City Council, a ward councilor, is told, Ahmad, we're going to give you money so we can have paid internships. We want you to direct this. A lot of those kids that were part of that program are now city councilors and elected officials because of 2015. So Ahmad Rivera was successful in that. Plus, he directed the Latino outreach for Senator Markey. It's just amazing. Nobody wants to answer the question because you have, they don't vote for us anyways. Well, you're basing that on what? Where's your poll numbers? Where are you getting that from? Because I could take the same Latino in Massachusetts, put him in Florida, and those people voting Republican. I mean, you've had, I think, the first wave of non-Cuban elected officials. There are 6 Puerto Ricans, 3 of them are Republican, and our districts that are heavily Democrat. So why is it up here people believe in the party because, believe in the Democratic Party, but you put them in Florida, all of a sudden they vote with an R. Why? Because the party does this. Talks to people. Very simple. Knock on the door and talk to people. But you have this fear of going into urban areas. The most conservative day in Massachusetts is Sunday at any Hispanic evangelical church. You're going to hear a conservative message. But because the people that run the party are so anti-religion, so anti-traditionalist, they're never going to reach out to those people. Kirsten Hughes and Charlie Baker will never reach out to them. They're going to say, well, Charlie was out on the ballot question for charter schools out there, in the community. It was a prop show, let's be honest. The ballot question lost. And my question to the most ardent Baker supporter, how many of those blacks and Hispanics that quote unquote with Charlie in these ads is Charlie going to support as Republicans running for city council this year because this is municipal elections? People can answer that question. I'll give you what the answer is. Go to Dunkin' Donuts. Big fat donut. That's basically it. So the party, and as you know, if you follow me on Facebook, I have a page called Massachusetts Minority Republican Coalition. I do not spare these people fire. And, people ask, the most ardent sycophant is going to be like, why don't they respond? You can't respond to what is the truth. You can't respond to a party sitting down and saying, we're not going to do anything. I mean, Charlie Baker runs a TV ad, probably the most offensive political ad I ever saw in my life, that is subtitled in English. And the first thing in that ad, Charlie Baker's pro-choice. I have relatives that are liberals but are pro-life and thought that was culturally offensive because none of the so-called experts, the political consultants, have any Hispanics. But if you look at all the big-time Democratic consultants in this state, they all have Hispanic political arms.
Let's talk about President Trump and his immigration policies to control the border and who comes through the gates. Having a strong ethnic identity, how do you feel about President Trump's immigration plans? You
have to control the borders. As a person that knew people that died in 9/11, I mean, those hijackers amongst them had 60 or 70 plus licenses illegally gotten. If you don't control the border, you're not going to have a country in the long run. What's interesting about that as a Dominican is that a few years ago, the Dominican Republic has a center-left government put in its constitution, basically aimed at Haitians, saying if you cannot prove your parents were citizens of the Dominican Republic by such a date, your parents are not considered citizens, you are not considered citizens. You have about 300, 400,000 people in a stateless situation. You had Dominicans, those elected Dominicans that are leftists, were basically cheering the Dominican army and military doing a pogrom. It was, for me, as an American, as a Dominican, it was embarrassing. I had a distant relative, Gino Diaz, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner, was basically threatened by a member of the government, not a cabinet minister, but the assistant to the assistant was told, Juno, you need to be careful about the things you say and when you drive here. That guy was never admonished.
Now, do you believe that the mainstream media and the Democrats and liberals are stoking discontent of the subject of immigration?
I think they are. I think most people want to have control. We're not an anti-immigrant country because if you look at Mexico, for example, in its constitution, I, as a son of an immigrant, could have never have joined the military. Cousins of mine could never have become police officers, Green Berets. They could never have joined the military because our parents are immigrants. In the Mexican Constitution, it states that.
Now, you are a veteran, correct?
I served, yes.
Okay. And I mean, do you support Donald Trump's plans to build the wall?
You have to do something because I see it won't be long before we see an American city go up in a nuclear cloud. I think the eventuality of that happening, and when you have the most dangerous street gang, MS-13, working in cahoots with Al-Qaeda and ISIS to bring their members through that border, which is a sieve, when the city goes up, they're going to be people who have to answer to that.
Well, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I've seen multiple. Sean Hannity is actually.
And Dennis Michael Lynch,
Yeah.
I think, also
he,
filmmaker.
He has done quite a bit of work down on the border,
Yes.
showing, and it's been reported that they've seen Korans,
Right,
you know,
prayer
abandoned
beads,
prayer rugs.
rugs.
You know, so yes, there are people getting through.
But that's the problem, and I think it goes right into what you said, Alex, is because there is a mainstream media meme. They don't want to publicize this information, but what they would prefer saying is that President Trump is an immigrant hater.
Yeah.
He wants to build the wall, and they keep going back to when he was running, and he did use those words about rapist and whatever. And I think that's just unfortunate because it keeps coming back and it falls back into the meme of the Main Street media.
It does.
Do you believe that President Donald Trump is an immigrant hater?
No, absolutely not.
Do your relatives, your friends, your associates in the community believe that?
I think in my family probably falls 60-40 that Trump is a racist. I mean, those of us who tend to be Trump supporters are people that have worn the uniform or are currently police officers. So there's a difference. When you're out on the street, you see the world from a different perspective. And it's led to some arguments, but no, that's what families are for. We just don't talk about it when the turkey's on the table.
Well, one of the things we were actually talking about before the show began tonight, we were talking about the difference. We tend to look at Hispanics or Latinos as being a voting bloc,
Yeah.
that you groupthink.
Yeah.
And you were saying that's in fact not true at all,
No,
and
I
that
mean,
people are very different.
Republicans, as you see, can get 35% of the Hispanic vote. Is that share going to grow or decrease? Probably could. On the flip side of things, it probably could decrease. But the party, and not Massachusetts because it's a hopeless cause, as long as we have the current people
Sure.
running the GOP here. You know, last night I posted on my page, Harris County, which is Houston, the largest city. They were doing it in a Hispanic engagement, Hispanic outreach. And I posted, you'll never, ever see this in the Republican Party in Massachusetts as long as we have Charlie Baker and Kirsten Hughes running the party.
Well, do you think one of the ways that, in case of President Trump, could get the national Hispanics to become more Republican, and even in the state, is jobs?
Yeah.
So we talk, when President Trump talks about some of the things he wants to do early on in his administration, and he's working on a plan very aggressively to bring business back to America, to make America, you know, build up American industries. So do you think jobs is one of the roots?
Working and putting food on the table is something that's going to make a difference. You know, if a factory opens up, well, you're going to need to put a restaurant. You're going to need a lunch truck. And if it's somebody that's Hispanic that says, you know what, I'm going to provide those services, you're creating jobs in the community. If you're hiring Hispanics to work in that factory, well, you're hiring Americans, period. You're gonna have down the road impact. So I think he can. I think he will, because unlike prior elected officials we have, is that he knows what a buck means. He knows how to balance a budget. He knows how to create a job. We have people in Congress who have been sitting there God knows how long that couldn't pass a basic economics test.
Sure, sure.
Now, there's currently a national and even a statewide push in Massachusetts for several states. Even some state representatives in Massachusetts are currently calling for sanctuary states. In Massachusetts, we already have 9 sanctuary cities. I know Lawrence is one.
Somerville.
There's also
Cambridge, Springfield, Northampton.
Now, is increasing the sanctuary presence a good idea? I mean, for the state and for America, and does it bring more problems than benefit the state or communities?
Let me put it this way, and I don't mean to demean the people of Lawrence. To me, it's like a second home. But when you have people like, yeah, you want to go into Lawrence, when you have officers afraid of wanting to do their job or can't do their job because of political correctness, eventually it trickles down, it spreads out. I mean, when you pick up your paper, be it the Eagle Tribune, the Globe, whatever, and you look at the arrests, and you look at your local paper here, how many of those guys are from the town? How many of those guys are from out of town? When I look at the New Hampshire papers, how many of those guys are originally from Lawrence, Lynn, that are just going up there doing the evil that they do?
Yeah.
It's,
I work, a stone's throw from Lawrence. I can see, Lawrence from my office window.
Yeah.
And I mean, I go to court in Lawrence quite a bit, being an attorney in Methuen currently. And, I understand exactly what you are talking about. I mean, it is like going into, you see some of the old films of Cuba, and Lawrence kind of looks like that.
Yeah.
Well, some of the things I worry about is that, there are people who believe that being a sanctuary city, it protects the immigrant who's in the city. But I think they could also be made victims because they're in the city.
The wonderful lie that's spread by liberals is that, they're more likely to talk police officers.
Right.
That's bull, because if you come from a third world country where the police is the oppressor, they're not going to talk to
They
American.
don't understand the concept of sanctuary.
They're not going to talk. They're not going to talk to American police. And if you're a Latino, Hispanic, whatever term you want to use, and you're a police officer, they'll be the first ones to tell you, "I'm seen as the enemy. I'm seen as a sellout." So it's a myth. It's not based on reality. I mean, look at the crime in Lawrence compared to Methuen.
Right, and I would think you would still be a pawn of a gang or of gang leaders or whatever the social structure.
Well, we've seen that in the last
of the
few
community
few days. De Blasio's administration releasing a kid who goes out and murder, but yet was held, and ICE says we want to put a retainer on this guy, but prior crimes, threatening people, using a gun. We know he didn't get that gun legally. When I was in the San Francisco area on active duty at Camp Parks a few years ago, you had a family that was butchered by, again, an illegal alien that ICE had put a call. We want this person who had a rap sheet longer than my leg. Basically, during a traffic situation, got out, pulled out an AK. Where do you get the AK?
Yeah.
Killed the father and his son and severely wounded the other son. You look at the movie Christmas Story, which is played on TBS or TNT 24/7 on Christmas Day. The director of that film was killed by an illegal alien.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
So I know Trump during the campaign, brought out a lot of family members of
Yes.
people who were killed by illegal aliens. People
He
who
calls
should have
them,
been.
doesn't he call them angel moms?
Yes.
Angel moms.
And-
I think the most tragic one was Matthew Denise
Yes.
down in Milford,
Yes.
who
Our own angel mom.
who
in
will never
Massachusetts.
walk down the aisle, who will never, like you and other people watching this, look at the window and look at his, trying to hold back tears, look at his child, being born. And yet you had a governor. Deval Patrick's very lucky Matthew Denise is not my relative, because I would have given him a right hook. When he referred to as that man, this boy, he will pay in hell for his words.
We have the Katie Steinle out in San Francisco, not much the same
Yeah.
thing. She wasn't hit by an automobile, but she was
She
murdered
was-
outright.
She was
just
shot by a person who crossed the border, Lord knows how many times.
five times, I think.
You have Phoenix, Arizona, which is now the kidnap capital, where Mexican drug gangs are playing it out in the streets of Phoenix. But yet the liberal administration won't talk about it. I can't understand why Democrats, in particular liberals, want to hide these things. These things are happening. And I seriously wish that the horrors that are inflicted on Americans are inflicted on them, because they need to feel some of the suffering and pain that these people are feeling.
Do you think, there's been a lot of talk, in regards to, in fact, Donald Trump even referenced it about illegal immigrants voting. Do you think that's the reason why the Democrats and the liberals
Right.
kind of brush over it?
California, you could go to California, be an illegal alien, which they issue out licenses, and you could register to vote, because the state of California purposely did not separate that list from what the Secretary of State will use to register voters. have
Because
illegal
you can get a driver's license in California.
because they're given to illegal aliens. So now California passed a law under the guise, well, this will increase democracy, but there's no separation of illegals from regular citizens. They're all put on, they're all registered to vote.
So what do you think that American citizenry has become accepting of open border policies or no border nation?
Well, those that live in the cities become accepting of that because this is what you see. But people who live in more rural areas, more suburban areas, you want control. You need to control the border because in the long run, you won't have a country. You will have what happened to the Roman Empire, where the Huns just basically rolled into the country. And you need to control the border. If you don't, like Savage says, language, borders, and culture. If you do not control the borders, you will have no culture. You will have nothing. You will have a mishmash. You will have a violent version of Lebanon. You look at Lebanon, which was called Beirut, which was called the Paris of the Mideast. Equal numbers of Christians, equal numbers of Druze, equal numbers of Shiites ran a very cordial society. But when they started accepting Palestinians as refugees to come in, who basically created a state within a state, did roadblocks, started going after elected Lebanese officials, in particular Christian officials. That is how the Civil War began in Lebanon. Is this what Americans want? Is this what liberal Americans in Cambridge want? Is this what you want? To have a Lebanized version of this country? Because that's what you're going to create.
You can take a look at what's going on in Sweden.
Sweden, I was going to say
right
the same
now.
thing. Is
You know,
President Trump just happened at a speech the other day. I think it was, he used the term Sweden. Look
Yeah.
what's happening in Sweden.
And they had
and
riots.
the liberals went berserk
And they had
about
riots
that
that
comment.
night.
And
well, what he was referring to, and I heard this on a Breitbart radio, was there was a filmmaker who a month or
his
two
name
ago.
is Amy Horowitz.
That was the filmmaker. Thank you. And he actually went to one of these no-go zones, or what they're being called as no-go zones, in Sweden. And he started filming because there's been increase in rape, increase in murder.
Very violent crimes.
Absolutely, in these areas. So he started filming, and he got the you-know-what kicked out of him.
Same thing happened to, people say 60 Minutes CBS, actually 60 Minutes Australia, went in with the police like, yeah, we got to go now. And they were starting to harass, and they started going after them.
Yeah.
My biggest fear is that I will probably see one of my nephews, younger ones, put on a uniform to go save the lives of liberal Europeans as Europe goes up in flames.
And they are going up in flames as we speak. I mean, there have been neighborhoods that have been torched, by rioting, extreme Muslims.
It seems that in the case of Sweden, but I think we can also see in Germany it's happening, in England it's happening, France, is that because of their very liberal immigration policies, but also allowing the refugees to come in unabated.
If you also
offset
notice,
the balance, just
those
like you said.
countries that were part of the former Warsaw Pact, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, where they threw the yoke off of the Russians, became very liberal societies, very democratic societies. With the rise of illegals coming in, they've become they have nationalistic governments. They've almost become fascistic because they do not want to see what they have gained lost. That's why Kurt Wilders in the Netherlands, I think he's going to win, but he's going to win enough to form a government, is basically saying that which makes us great is going to be destroyed by these people who do not respect our traditions.
Well, even in France, Le Pen is actually ahead, and she
Marie
is
Le
actually,
Pen is, and I hear that Angela Merkel probably will not run. I don't know if that's true yet.
No, I haven't heard anything
that she's
about
going
that,
to step
but,
down and not run again.
People like to say, well, these are fascists, No. You look at the hordes that are crossing the border, you don't see families, you see young men. If you want to improve what's happening in the Middle East, go and fight for your damn country.
The young men need to stay home and fight.
That's what Americans did.
Yes.
Right. we fought, against our
War.
oppressors. And why are these people why are they leaving? Are they hidden Al-Qaeda? Or are they actual
Well, remember
refugees?
James Comey, the current FBI director, talked about the community, said, you don't know how to vet somebody from Syria because there's no paperwork.
Right.
Town hall's been blown up
Well,
in
isn't
whatever
this
town.
exactly what people are complaining about, these 7 countries
Yeah.
that President Trump first put the executive
Which
order
which
out.
was designed by the Obama administration.
But it was for that reason, because
Yeah.
there's no centralized government in these 7 countries.
Correct. Yeah, and actually, these countries were the ones that were designated as a danger by the former administration.
By the Obama administration.
So I mean, it's very interesting that Trump is actually moving the ball when Obama just wouldn't budge.
What's interesting, if you look at Arizona about a decade ago, passed a law that their police, be it the highway patrol or local police or sheriff's department, could ask the immigration status. Supreme Court says that's the province of the federal government. Yeah, we have the state of Washington. No, we want to dictate what immigration policy is. So because there was no hierarchy created, because Jeff Sessions was not the attorney general, they basically went, here, you go, literally an hour before the U.S. attorney went to the district court, 9th district, here, go ahead, go fight it. No research was done. And you had a judge say, well, nobody from Somalia has done a terrorist attack in the U.S. Yeah, a few months earlier, you had that kid at Ohio State that drove into a crowd and whipped out a machete and started until he was shot by an officer. The officer is hated in the liberal community because he shot an immigrant that only wanted to make a better life. He's, as Howie Carr would say, doing the jobs that Americans won't do, whipping out a machete in public at a public university.
So far, what has been the most impressive aspect to you in the Trump administration?
I think having people like Rex Tillerson, the current head of Homeland Security, who's from Massachusetts, I think that he's committed. He's going to hire more border agents. I think the raids that are happening are picking up criminals. They're not picking up Joe, Jose Blow off the street who was working at whatever. They're picking up criminals. In fact, from what I understand from a friend of mine who works from ICE, that the criminals it's 72% of the people they're picking up in these raids are criminals compared to it was done during Obama. It was in the low 50s.
What do you think is the most unimpressive aspect?
Probably Mike Flynn leaving. I mean, the current lie, all the Russians hacked our elections. And you could tell that most people aren't like you, me, you, are involved. Have you ever seen a voting machine? Big, clunky.
Yeah, you can't hack it.
You can't hack it because it's not connected to the internet.
Well, and you still don't know what the outcome's going to be,
Right.
even if you
because
could.
you have to go in there and program it, and I've done this, go in there, program it before the elections to make sure you do a dry run, okay, yeah, it's going to run. Not hacked. And even, what's his face said that escaped Snowden and said, no, the Russians didn't do this. Basically, whoever hacked basically exposed to us that Hillary and John Podesta are very anti-Catholic, very anti-American. They exposed that. Hillary was a lousy candidate from the get-go. Wasn't going to work. Was thought it was going to be handed to her. Yeah. I mean, I think would have worked. I think Bernie would have worked for it.
Well, thank you, Alex. That's the end of our show. It went so quickly.
I look forward to coming back again.
And you will be invited back. We thank you for watching Your Right to Know and sitting with the FRCC. And as we leave you, we want you to remember that your local city town Republican committee is the only grassroots organization that supports and holds dear your liberty, your constitutional rights, and conservative values. We encourage you to join us. Why? Because to us, GOP stands for growth, opportunity, and prosperity. And because we always stand for freedom. Thank you, and have a good night.
America, we stand for freedom. So let us all unite to yearn and strive for our republic that reflects our values, that preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might, that reflects our values and preserves our rights, and goes forth in power and might.